This is probably going to be one of my last couple of videos as I kind of get busy and gear up for my own startup. I read this book. It's called The Hidden Reality by a guy named Brian Greene. The subtitle is Parallel Universes and the Laws That Govern Our Cosmos. It's not the exact subtitle, but I can recall it at the top of my mind. So it's a really fascinating book if anyone's interested in how um, the reality and how we perceive it is much more than um, what it appears to be. And I kind of made a video along those lines, but I kind of made a segment to how understanding happens. But coming back to this topic, um, there's a couple of things I've been thinking of, so I just want to take time to kind of document it. It's a really fascinating book again, and I would really recommend it to anyone who is kind of interested in, like, again, the nature of the universe. They talk about like some really fascinating things in this book, and the author Brian Greene, I believe, if I can recall, he has a background in mathematics, so he kind of looks at everything from a very rigorous kind of a point of view. Mathematical, scientific kind of point of view. So this is not pseudoscience. This is all either in the works when it comes to theoretical physics or applied physics. Mostly theoretical physics, and just kind of making sure the way I perceive it that the math kind of adds up. They talk about some really fascinating things in this book, like things like the ability to be able to make entire new universes. How that's I believe theoretically could be possible, but the thing is, even if we made it, we wouldn't have the means to be able to observe it. So what would be the point? Based on all the technological development we've had so far and on the horizon, I don't think there's a means to be able to observe what really happens when you create a universe. So what's the point? But there are other questions along those lines, obviously. What, I'm gonna get into that. The thing I was thinking about is, like, there's a couple of other some really fascinating topics. I'm not gonna get time to document it all. But one of the things they talked about was there's a mention of a guy by the name of John Archibald Wheeler, who he had a knack for finding like some of the top minds and grooming them. So I can't remember all the names, but Richard Feynman was one of his finds. So John Archibald Wheeler is accredited with, finding individuals like Richard Feynman, who's like a legend in the world of physics. So one of the things, there's a couple of things like mentioned, like so that's how I kind of found out about John Archibald Wheeler. So I kind of looked him up on the internet. And there's this one clip that he made on YouTube, or it's one of the clips, of him on YouTube, not him that he made it, where he's kind of talking about how if he could go back in time, then he would want to have a conversation with Plato. So this is really fascinating, and it's really fascinating how he actually conceives that conversation is also going to happen, because he's kind of referring to the fact that he would actually go back to the actual place in Greece where Plato was having a set of conversations with, I believe, Socrates. I'm not exactly sure. My Greek history is weak at best. But yeah, he'd want to like tap into, like he said, he would want to like measure the acoustics that are in the rocks around there to be able to deduce what kind of conversations happen. So it's like a little like I don't even know if that's possible, but like he would actually go to that means in order to be able to figure out what Plato was thinking. And I've been kind of thinking of Plato's allegory of caves from the perspective of, like, I've always had an interest in things like consciousness and our place in the universe in terms of a conscious experience. A conscious experience is a subset of consciousness. Consciousness is a catchphrase for things that we don't necessarily have a very good means of explaining or even rationalizing. So it's a very broad conversation, I suspect. But the Plato's allegory of caves, the way I understand it, is I think I understand it. But basically, the reality we perceive is an illusion, and we are kind of like, if there was a fire in a cave, then our existence would be the equivalent of the shadows dancing on the walls of the caves, whereas the real action is probably happening somewhere else. So I gotta get into this a bit more detail, because I think there's a mention of like the actual beings, and then I think there's a puppet master of sorts as well. So so that's another conversation. But I've been thinking about like Plato's allegory of caves from the perspective of intelligence. Here in the domain of, I kind of think in terms of recording something. Sorry. I think in terms of, I'm starting to think in terms of singularities and not just a singularity. And the kind of thoughts I'm trying to wrap my mind around are just like the emergence of life in general around not just the solar system, but the galaxy and the wider universe at that. And I'm kind of looking at things like the panspermia theory with kind of microbial, how do you say that? Microbial life, kind of like bouncing from one planet to another, solar system to another, perhaps even galaxies to another. I don't know how long that journey is going to take. Probably not. I don't know. On top of these, like things like, you know, cosmic dust or rocks or comets and whatnot, and that's what I think that's what the panspermia theory suggests. So life could be kind of mixing and matching in all sorts of intricate ways. So that's the emergence of life in general. It kind of wrap your mind around from the perspective of Drake's equation and whatnot. So then there's the question of the emergence of intelligent life, and I don't know much about this domain, but I think the mere possibility that life exists, in my mind, would actually, that could be a limiting statement to make, but it seems like life is a pattern. It's like something that emerges in a kind of golden spiral kind of a format whether it's a tree in the backyard or any other life form at that. And life in general is kind of it's like complexity, and then there's some standardization, then there's more complexity, and then there's standardization, and that appears to be the model for consciousness as well, because you know, like the differences are exponential in scale, so that's why we don't necessarily compare our consciousness to something like a potato bug. But you know, like billions of years ago, life on this planet was mostly I think it went from pyrocorites to eukaryotic life form, and we are kind of all descendants of whatever was the remnant from the Cambrian explosion, and then I think there was a crunch of sorts, and 1% of the life survived, and then everything you see around yourself, including plants, animals, bacteria, is probably is actually a remnant from that time frame. And then, like many cycles happen, life kept on, you know, kept on evolving, for lack of a better word. 66 million years ago, there was a crater at Chicxulub. I don't know how to say that, but that crater wiped out the dominant life form at that time, which was like the dinosaur, and then smaller beings like marsupials who could hide in the crevices went on to evolve in terms of primates, and obviously other life form as well, non-primate, other mammalian, and all sorts of other life forms that survived. And everything that you see around yourself is the remnant from that one event that happened 66 million years ago. So coming back to intelligent life, what is it that really takes life in general? Oh, I gotta move this and move to another spot. Give me 1 second. Okay. A bit of a distraction, but so what is it again that causes life forms to become more intelligent? Is it merely just the evolutionary pressure, or is there more to it than just that? It's an interesting question from the perspective of what we know, which is extremely limited based on our perceptions and what we have peered into so far. Such an enormous universe. I mean, there could be more than 100 billion stars in our galaxy as a result of the gravitational wave find, because the structure of the galaxy probably is not flat, so there's probably a lot more stars than we have perceived or being able to. I don't think we've mapped out all the stars, but the estimate is around 100 billion, around that figure, stars. And so again, you kind of like start looking at things from the perspective of Drake's equation, and even if you take the lowest common denominator, then I think the figure comes up to 10,000 advanced civilizations. And these are 10,000 advanced civilizations. There could be life along different levels on on different planes and planners and planets at that. We're not talking about multi-world or many worlds interpretation and extra dimensions in terms of some of the stuff that Michio Kaku talks about, and others too. But so again, what is the question? Is what is it that causes life to go from to evolve to a higher state? Is it just the act of evolution itself and being able to adapt and modify and not just your surrounding, but even yourself over a longer time period? And this goes back to John Wheeler, because that's why I kind of started with this note, because Wheeler was of the opinion that the universe is just one giant information processor. So actually, I think this is one of the comments he made in the 90s, what I'm about to say next. And that was that somebody asked him, Wheeler, in which domains could one expect to see the most profound kind of advancements in the realm of physics. And he put his head down and thought about it for a long time, and what seemed like eternity. And finally, when he raised his head, he replied back. John Archibald Wheeler, the guy who has trained scientists like Richard Feynman, replied back with a single word, saying, information. Information was going to be the domain in the realm of physics where most of the advances were going to come from. So that, I think he made these comments in the mid to late 80s. Obviously there's been a lot of innovation in the world of bits. So is that just a part of the movement when it comes to how we as a species will further unravel the mechanisms through which we further make sense out of the nature of reality, or place in the cosmos, as well as the nature, as well as the laws that govern the cosmos, and obviously our place in it. So going back to I don't know if I should elaborate on intelligence itself. I think intelligence is relative, because based on our perceptions are extremely limited, because we haven't really probed anything. We haven't even discovered what's in our backyard in terms of the solar system. But I kind of thought about this last night. So if you kind of compare consciousness to a potato bug, there's probably no match, not that I know of. And the difference in terms of the level of intelligence as exhibited by the two different species is obviously exponential. So however you equate that difference, if you kind of take our level of intelligence and equate it to a form of intelligence that would be much more intelligent than us, then it's difficult to kind of anticipate what the nature being, and even perhaps the space or the realms that such a entity would inhabit would conceivably be like, not just look like. it's difficult to kind of wrap your mind around it, because you don't even know what kind of senses you need just to be able to begin to understand something like that. Just like it's probably going to be very difficult for a potato bug to be able to rationalize and make sense out of the human construct and all the weird and complicated and complex and beautiful ways through which the construct kind of evolves, for lack of a better word, not just works. So going back to Plato's kind of allegory of caves, sorry, actually going back to singularities, here's where I really want to kind of get to, or the gist of the idea is that I was thinking, what if there was like singularity is like almost like a catch phrase. Well, what if singularities would interact with each other? And the question then becomes, why would that happen? I don't know, but singularity could just be a catchphrase for, well, one level of intelligence, and as it exists, or consciousness, that I'm not saying consciousness equates to intelligence. Again, consciousness is a very broad subject. I don't even know how to begin to wrap my mind around something like that. How do you explain everything? I'm not saying that the universe is conscious or not conscious, but intelligence is definitely a construct, a subconstruct of consciousness. But again, consciousness does not equal intelligence. So anyway, so going back to, there's a lot of bugs here. Going back to that comment about singularities, there's something about the nature of the universe itself, because the universe behaves differently when you observe it. So I think that's proven. Why does that happen is an interesting question. Is that something? Is there like some quantum kind of mechanical event happening that forces particles to kind of collapse based on some kind of force field that the observer generates that is unseen? Or like, what is it that causes the actual nature of the universe to be different when it's observed? It's a very interesting question, because the ramification, one of the ramifications that I can think of is a reality through which like I mean, does that mean, I don't know whether my physics is weak and math is super weak at that, but actually non-existent, but actually both of these are not. Just trying to wrap your mind around these. So does that mean that, again, the nature of reality is different than what we perceive? Because if particles are actually behaving differently when observed, so what is the sum total of the essence of reality when it just is and it's not being observed? And you kind of start getting into some of the other realms, and the conversation starts getting more interesting, because you kind of bring in the simulation theory that we're living in a simulation, and to the best of my abilities, I don't think there's a way to be able to disprove that theory, so it remains contested. I believe there are some experiments being conducted, so we'll find out. That's another conversation, but where I was going with this is, yeah, singularities interacting with each other. So the question is, why would that happen? And you could also ask, why wouldn't that happen? I mean, if cultures interact with each other strongly, weakly, however, then there isn't really a reason why singularities would also not interact with each other. So the example that I was thinking about last night was, imagine I'm walking around in this construct, which is our sense of reality and how we perceive it. This is how we perceive it. Reality could be different. There's different schools of thought on this, not just from the perspective of like wave particle duality or the many worlds interpretation, but also some believe that the simulation theory or simulations theory would obviously have the component to it whereby everything that we perceive is just being powered by giant computation of sorts, and in terms of efficiencies, when it comes to that theory, the reality would only be powered when the observer observes something, because you don't want to have everything powered all the place all the time. That's not just computationally efficient. So I don't know which one of these obviously theories is correct. If anything, it could be something else. It could just be the way it is, meaning that everything exists at that place, at that time, all the time, and that's the way the world or the universe really functions, based on the laws of physics and how they apply to our universe. But then, how does the question of the many dimensions fit into what is our place in the many dimensions? And that forces you to rethink some of the things I just said, these are all really fascinating questions. But the thought experiment, the beginning of the thought experiment, the way I was thinking was imagine I'm walking around, and whether I am who I am in the world that I perceive to be the way it is or not, I am walking about that world. So maybe the world is the way it is in this fixed dimension, in a fixed state, or maybe it's part of many dimensions, and it's kind of like all falling upon each other, for lack of a better word. Like if you look at a tesseract, that's how it kind of functions. That's like a four-dimensional world, and it could be higher set of dimensions, and perhaps we are a wave, and our particles are flowing through the many dimensions at the same time, which would effectively make us appear in every universe at the same time. But we only choose to interact with something, and that's when it gets into the question of consciousness, because our actions and our minds too is possible that that's the combination of the two makes the set of realities that we would inhabit. So it's not one set of reality that impacts everyone. I think, whoa, it's a bug. It's a big bug. Is many different kind of realities, and reality really is whatever you want it to be, and you choose what kind of reality you would want to inhabit, and you have control no matter what happens. And so it starts kind of at this point, it kind of starts branching off in more like philosophical / in the spiritual realms from the perspective of Buddhism and whatnot. Not from the perspective of reincarnation, but just like in terms of waves and energy, and like perhaps even karma, stuff like that. But I don't wanna go into those realms in this video. It's not the intention. But coming back, so into that thought experiment. So, however the universe functions, and however we are going about in that world, again, from a physical point of view, whether we are, it's like in a matrix sense, really in a fixed spot, and the world's kind of moving around us, and if it's a simulation, it's so good that we perceive everything to be real based on our senses. And that is, I said this a couple of months ago, where I said that a subjective experience is also so a subjective experience also finds its underpinnings on perhaps an objective phenomena, meaning if there's sunlight hitting my skin right now, then there's some computation happening in the neurons on my skin, which is telling my brain that we want you to perceive that. Actually, I want you to process this information from the perspective of, all right, it's getting hot, and I don't know, start making some vitamin D, and if it gets too hot, then get some water, and so on and so forth. It's a really bad example, but basically, there's the subjective experience is one of the senses. Is another one could be, I don't know, just like pick up a certain smell, which is really atoms in a certain format going into your olfactory lobes, and the pattern is etched in the neocortex. So if you kind of come across that pattern again, the Markov model kind of kick in, and you recognize that smell. And it's kind of like same with sight. Obviously, it's simpler. Retina is pretty complex as a organ, but light's hitting, photons hitting an object, bouncing off of it, going into my eyes, for lack of a better word, or retina, and being kind of projected as a single coherent image after some translation happens from here to like the neocortex. I think that's where the vision system is. So these are three senses. Obviously, there's more. Touch and sight, sound, touch, smell. Geez, I can't even recall the full five senses. Sight, hearing. Sorry, hearing, sound as well. So there's the fifth one. So our perception would be, again, like even if we were in that simulation in a fixed kind of position, and all of this was an illusion. The question then becomes, going back to that conversation about singularities interacting with each other, why would that happen? And the question is, why wouldn't that happen? They're both valid questions. So you got to start thinking of it in terms of Rake's equation, and considering what John Archibald Wheeler has said, and I think Kurzweil kind of refers to it in one of his books as well. I think it's in The Age of Spiritual Machines, or it could be How to Create a Mind, one or the other. Or it could be in The Singularities. I forget which one of the books, but Kurzweil is of the opinion that non-information processing universe simply die out, which is a fascinating theory, because it's kind of an allegory or a reference to the fact that intelligence is preferred, and by the very nature of the universe, we don't know why, because obviously I don't think, to the best of our knowledge, we've been able to peer outside our own universe, and to be able to kind of come up with questions related to our existence in the wider universe and what have you. Where am I going with this? So my sense is that cognition, at the very least, or even consciousness as a catchphrase, is a pattern. And like going back to the example I use, us to potato bugs, and potato bugs to us, and like us to an higher like being. If we try to conceptualize that kind of a life form, then it would probably look like a pattern to us, perhaps a fractal, because if we did get like some kind of a high level metaphorical pattern, it's not a visual pattern, then that metaphorical pattern to us would look like a fractal, and we'd zoom in and we'd find more complexity, and we'd keep doing that, because it's going to be really difficult for us to kind of wrap our minds around some of those things, and the more we interact with it, the more we will change. Our very evolution is a testament to that fact, with the creation of the tools and the spaces we create, both of which, the combined effect of which has a profound impact on our sense of evolution. And the very act of interacting with our tools changes us here in a naked ape kind of a sense. I haven't seen that documentary, but like we shed the hair from obviously from the time of Lucy to now, and perhaps before that. and the new cortex grew, and we started making more complex, better tools than just stone tools. We started generating the capability of processing information much more efficiently, turning into knowledge, and kind of becoming a knowledge gathering society, and so on and so forth. So singularities interacting with each other is going to be a very profound I gotta go. My daughter's crying. I'm gonna record this video again, or an addendum or addition to it.